Good morning everybody, welcome to the book picker video. Today we have the final part of Percy Jackson's Greek heroes. Today's video is going to be really long because we have one of the most famous and longest heroes. So I think that we should not waste any more time and let's start with the heroes. Today's video's first hero is the famous Greek singer and hero Orpheus. He is from the kingdom of Thrace and his father is of course the king of Thrace and his name was Oagris. But first we're not going to talk about Orpheus directly, we're going to talk about his father before Orpheus was even born, when his father was the prince of Thrace. Back then Oagris loved partying and fighting, and especially in wars. So when Dionysus, the god of wine, came to Thrace with all of his followers and saying that they were going to party all across Greece and sometimes fight, Oagris immediately joined them. So every time while they were partying, Oagris had a beautiful voice, so of course he was always singing. In fact, he sang so well that he attracted the attention of one of the 9 muses. The 9 muses are like goddesses, but they are a little bit weaker. Each one of them is responsible for one of different arts, like drawing, painting, singing, dancing, and literature, etc. So he attracted the attention of the oldest one, and that is Calliope. So one time, after a long time from Oagris joining Dionysus, they went to fight the Indians, of course in India. So when they were about to charge them, Oagris was hit in the head and he fell into the river Ganges. So Calliope was watching them fight, so she took Oagris and saved him and took him away from the battle. When he woke up, they fell in love and they got married, and then they had a son, and who is Orpheus. So of course, since Orpheus' mother was one of the 9 muses, he technically counted as a demigod. But he lived in the kingdom of Thrace with his father, and as we said in the last video, Thrace is one of the harshest places in ancient Greece. To make Orpheus' life even harder, his father lost interest in him when the moment he found out that Orpheus was not exactly the fighting type. But one good thing about Orpheus was that his voice was so good, it was even better than his father's. Every weekend, Calliope would visit her son Orpheus and take him to Olympus, where he would practice his singing with the other 9 muses, who were technically his aunts, and also with Apollo, the god of singing, and the other instruments like the guitar. One time, Apollo came with his magical lyre, and which is a type of harp, but he left it on one of the tables. And of course, Orpheus had never tried a lyre because there was only one lyre, and as we said, it belonged to Apollo. So Orpheus knew that it was not a good idea to take a god's thing without his permission, but he was too shy to ask Apollo for it. So he finally gathered the courage and took it without Apollo's permission and started singing on it. But then when Apollo heard that someone took it from him, he turned around and was going to blast Orpheus, but he did not blast him for 2 reasons. First of all, that Orpheus was holding his lyre and Apollo did not want to damage it. And second of all, Orpheus was singing so beautifully that Apollo did not want to interrupt him. When Orpheus finished singing, he gave Apollo his lyre back and realized his mistake and told Apollo that he was ready to die. But Apollo refused and told him that he is too good and had potential to become one of the best singers in the world if he continued on practicing. So from that day onwards, Orpheus took Apollo's advice and kept practicing until when he reached adulthood, he became so good at singing that it was almost like magic. Sometimes he would walk into the marketplace, start singing and walk out of the town, and people would follow him until he stopped singing. His singing could also make flowing rivers stop, trees move, or even break rocks. When Dionysus heard of this, he sent some of his followers to recruit Orpheus to their party. Some of his followers are called the Maenads. They are women who partied so much that they got magical powers. They are super fast and could also grow super long nails that are as sharp as swords that they could tear their enemies apart with. They kept on asking Orpheus until they became a little aggressive, but Orpheus' mother Calliope stopped them. And then she decided that it would be a good idea to get Orpheus to get married to save him. So she decided that he should get married to Apollo's demigod daughter, who is named Eurydice. So then Orpheus and Eurydice fell in love and decided that they would get married, and Orpheus announced this to the public. But then a few days before they got married, Eurydice decided that she would take a walk in the woods, but then she got attacked by a bear, but she was able to run away. But the problem was that she fell into a hole full of snakes and died. So when Orpheus found her body, he got so sad that he would not sing any happy songs and kept on singing sad songs. After that, Orpheus tried to break the rock open again by singing, but it would not open, and he even knew deep down in his heart that he would not get another chance to take his wife back. But then he had an idea. He thought that if he could not have his wife in the overworld, then he could meet her in the underworld. So he found the nearest large rock that he could carry and tried to smash his head in, but it turned to dust just as it was about to hit his head. He then looked for the nearest lions, but they rolled around in the grass as if they were pet cats. He searched for the nearest snakes, but they just slithered around his legs because they liked him. Then he decided to stab himself with a sword, but it just turned into rubber, and he tried to jump off a cliff, but the air carried him back upwards, and so on and so forth. So then when he knew that he was not going to die easily, he picked a spot in the woods, and he just kept on playing and playing and playing without any rest or food. Then after a long while, which no one knows how much it was, some Maenads who we talked about earlier overheard him, and they started talking about how much they hated him for not joining them. So then they decided that they would go and kill him, and they were able to kill him by tearing him to shreds with their super long nails. Of course, Orpheus did not try to fight back, and he was actually happy to see himself die. When he went into the underworld, he was reunited with Eurydice, and they had a happy ending, which surprises me because I did not know that there were any more happy endings in this book. Our next hero is probably the most famous hero of all time, and he is Hercules. Of course, he is the son of Zeus, king of the gods, but the stories say that after Hercules was born, Zeus decided to leave Hercules and his mother because he was afraid that his wife, Hera, the goddess, was going to kill Hercules and his mother. So after Zeus left them, Hercules' mother remarried with a dude named Amphitryon, who is an army general, and they both had another son called Iphicles. Somehow Hera found out about Hercules, that he is the son of Zeus, and she decided that she will get rid of him. This is how it went. She made two big snakes, each the size of an arm, and put them both in the room that both Iphicles and Hercules were asleep. When they both slept, both the snakes slithered into their crib that they were sleeping in and tried to bite Hercules. But of course Hercules was strong like his father Zeus, and he strangled both of the snakes, each in one arm. But his parents woke up when they heard the sound of Iphicles crying, and when they went to see, they saw Hercules holding two giant snakes in his arms and laughing. Somehow Zeus also found out that Hera tried to kill Hercules, and he got so mad at her that she did not try to harm Hercules in any way for a couple of years. So we skip until Hercules becomes 10 years old, and his parents decide that it would be a good idea to make him take music lessons. But this turns out to be a very bad idea, because Hercules ends up killing his music teacher. I'm going to tell you how it goes. It was about Hercules' third music lesson, and his music teacher was getting frustrated because Hercules had no musical talent at all. So one time when Hercules did a mistake, the music teacher grabbed the lyre out of Hercules' hands and started insulting him. As we already saw, when Hercules killed the snakes, he is very strong. But what we found out now is that he also has anger issues. Because after he gets insulted by the music teacher, he grabs the lyre out of his hands, which is made out of metal, and then crashes it upon his head. And of course, this immediately breaks the lyre along with the music teacher's head, instantly killing him. After this, Amphitryon, Hercules' stepfather, decides that it would be a good idea to send Hercules away so that he does not kill anyone else, and he decided that he will send him to work in a farm for a few years. Some stories say that it was for 3, some for 5, but I think it was more like 5, as we will see a bit after some time. This is because while Hercules was working at the farm, the kingdom that Hercules was living in got attacked by another kingdom called the Minions, and the Minions won. But they left this kingdom alone, but they had one rule, that they will get 100 cows from them every year. And back then 100 cows was very big, it was like $1 million right now. So then after Hercules' time at the farm was finished, he immediately went to the marketplace of the kingdom to check out the people there and see if there was anyone he knew. And when he went there, he immediately saw the transaction that I just talked about that had 100 cows. And the reason I said I thought it was 5 years is because when he looked around to see if somebody reacted to the 100 cows, nobody was reacting, which meant that they were used to this, which meant it was going on for a long time of about 5 years. So anyway, when Hercules saw that nobody was trying to fight for the 100 cows, he got mad and went to talk to the soldiers that were trying to take the cows. There were 4 soldiers. He talked to their leader and said that if they left now and told their king to not take any more cows, that he would spare them and their kingdom. Of course, the soldier laughed in Hercules' face because they had swords, of course, and weapons, and Hercules had nothing. He then proceeded to insult Hercules, which made Hercules angry and triggering his anger issues. Of course, before I tell you what happened, Hercules of course got stronger because he was working at the farm, and if you ask anyone who works at a farm, they'll tell you that it was very tiresome work that makes you much stronger. So then Hercules proceeded to punch the leader in the face, immediately killing him, and then quickly got rid of the other 2 soldiers. If you're paying attention, you'll remember that there is one more soldier, but Hercules did not kill him, but just knocked him out. This is the part where it gets a little bit disgusting. Hercules takes their swords and cuts off the remaining soldier's arms so that he could not protect himself. He then takes him and sends him back to his king of Minia and told him that he will not take any more cows. And of course Hercules knew that this meant war, but he was not afraid. He then asked his people if they had any more weapons other than the ones he just found, but they told him that the Minions took all of their weapons. He asked them about the temple of Athena, which had armor and weapons, but they told him that they would not have taken it because they would have been crazy to do so, because Athena would have immediately cursed them. He told them that it was okay and that they would take the weapons because Athena is the goddess of wisdom and warfare, and she would want them to protect themselves. And he was right because she did not curse anyone or kill anyone. Of course, Hercules was the general of the army, but the army was very weak compared to that of the Minions, because they were about 500 maximum, while the army of the Minions was 10,000 at the very least. But Hercules, the general, was very smart, and that is what won him the war. He knew that the Minions would attack immediately the next day, so he asked about the routes that the Minions took to reach their kingdom. And he found that there is only one that is at an awkward angle that they could use to make a perfect trap. So they hid there and put some spikes in the ground and hid behind some big rocks where they had some high ground. When they knew that the minion soldiers were in this place and they crossed, they jumped out and started shooting them with arrows while they were not ready. This helped them kill a lot along with the spikes. And then the other soldiers jumped down with their swords and started killing. Of course, many of Hercules' army's soldiers died, but the entire minion army got wiped out, and this is mostly thanks to Hercules and his immense power. Of course, the gods knew about this, so then they visited Hercules, and each god gave him some gifts. But we will not go into detail, we will just say a few of them. Hermes gave Hercules a magical staff, while Apollo gave him a magical bow and arrow. Ares gave him a magical sword, and Athena did not reward him, but finally Poseidon rewarded Hercules by giving him his daughter to have as his wife. But then we fast forward a few days, where the goddess Hera whispers to the king of the kingdom of Mycenae, whose name is Eurystheus, who is also the cousin of Hercules. Hera tells him that Hercules will probably try to kill him and become the new king of Mycenae, and that he has to give him 10 tasks which Hercules has to do, and that he will try to kill Hercules in these 10 tasks. Then Eurystheus asks Hera how he will get Hercules to visit him, and Hera tells Eurystheus that she will take care of this. So every time that Hercules goes to visit a priest or someone like that, they tell him that the gods are angry with him and that he should go to the oracle of Delphi. Or that he should go immediately to Mycenae, to the king of Eurystheus, where he would give him his 10 trials. Of course, after Hercules kept hearing this over and over and over, he got angry, but he tried to keep his cool. He then asked his wife what he should do, and she told him that he should just try to go to the Oracle of Delphi, and whatever happens, happens. He listens to her and goes to the Oracle of Delphi, and she tells him the exact same thing. Now he loses his temper and grabs her stool and tries to chase her and kill her. But the god Apollo comes and intervenes, and they almost get into a fist fight, but Zeus also intervenes and stops them. So then Hercules goes back to his home, and his wife asks him what happened, and now Hercules really loses his temper and kills his wife, his children, and he's about to kill his cousin, but his cousin Iolaus, but he remembers in the final moments that he is his cousin and does not kill him. He then decides that he will finally go back to the kingdom of Mycenae and see his 10 trials from the king Eurystheus. Of course, this madness that led Hercules to kill most of his family was from the goddess Hera. She did this because she wanted to speed up Hercules' trip to his cousin Eurystheus so that he would die during his 10 tasks, because that was the plan, so that he would not become the next king after Eurystheus dies. Anyway, when Hercules arrives at the kingdom, he meets his cousin Eurystheus, who welcomes him by saying that he was waiting for him and immediately giving him his first task, which was to kill the Nemean lion. If this Nemean lion was like any normal lion, it would have been a piece of cake for Hercules, but things are never easy in Greek mythology, so of course it had to be more difficult. This lion called the Nemean lion has its fur is stronger than any metal. So whenever Hercules tried to shoot it with a bow, his arrows immediately broke. He also tried to burn it with a torch. It didn't work also. And then he tackled it and tried to slice its throat. When his blade touched its neck, it should have killed it immediately. But instead, the blade shattered and damaged Hercules. He then knew that he would have to get smart and make a plan. So after some thinking, he decided that he would trap it in a cave. Luckily, he found a nearby large cave that had 2 entrances. So then he picked up a large boulder and blocked the back entrance, and then lured the lion into the cave, where he trapped it. He then followed it inside and had a wrestling match with it, and then proceeded to stab it inside the mouth, because he figured that inside it would not be as strong as its fur. And he was right, because he killed it. After that, before he left, he thought that the Nemean lion's fur would be useful as some armor. So then he skinned it from the inside, which is pretty hard work and also disgusting. But after a few hours, he was able to get it, and then he took the meat and took it to the market and sold it for very high prices, which made him very rich. He then went back to the king Eurystheus and told him that his task was completed and awaited his second task. So then his second task was to kill another mythological creature, which was called the Hydra. This is probably the most famous monster from Greek mythology, but I will talk about it as well. It is basically a large reptile as large as a building that has 3 heads. 2 of these heads are mortal, so that if you cut them, they die, but the body does not die, because there is the 3rd head, which is immortal. If you cut it off, the head will stay alive, but the body will die. To add to that, if you cut one of the mortal heads, 2 heads will spring up from its place. Also, it has sharp claws. It can breathe fire or spit poison. So this was way harder than the Nemean lion. But the main problem was that Hercules did not know where this Hydra was or how to get there. But luckily for him, he found his cousin Iolaus waiting outside of the kingdom, and he talked to him saying that he could help him get to the Hydra. They then asked around for some time, and they found out that the Hydra lives in a swamp area near the kingdom. They then went there, and they easily spotted the Hydra because it was roaming around, breaking trees and killing small animals. Anyway, Hercules' plan was not a good one. His plan was that Iolaus would shoot arrows from behind while Hercules attacked the Hydra and cut off its heads. This did not work out well, because the first 2 heads that Hercules cut off were the mortal ones. So instead of 3 heads, it became 5 heads. But before Hercules could cut off the immortal head, because he knew where it was, he then heard his cousin Iolaus screaming behind him. He then looked around and saw that there was a large crab as big as a car approaching Iolaus. So then he ran back and crushed the crab under his leg. He then hid with Iolaus and made a plan. Hercules would cut off the heads of the Hydra, and Iolaus would take a torch and burn the cut off parts. If this worked out well, then there would be no more heads that would grow out. And it did work out, because there was after some time there was only one more head, and it was the immortal one. When Hercules cut it off, it of course was still alive, but the body fell down dead. He then dug a grave and put the head in the grave and buried it. But unluckily for Hercules, when he went back to the kingdom of Mycenae to receive his third task, King Eurystheus told him that this one did not count, because Hercules' cousin Iolaus helped him, and he told Hercules that if he wanted his tasks to count, that his cousin should not help him anymore. Of course, Hercules was very angry about this, but he had no other choice, so he accepted while he was mad. But he inside wanted to kill his cousin Eurystheus. So when he got his third task, he found that it was easier than the Hydra. He had to catch a large boar like the one that Atalanta killed in my last video, if you watched that. If you did not, go watch it right now, it will explain some more things. Anyway, he had to catch it and not kill it, which is actually harder, because if he had to kill it, it would have been much easier. He could have just chopped off its head or shot it with an arrow. Catching it would be harder because it's meanwhile it's fat, but it was very fast, so it would be hard to catch it. Hercules actually spent some months trying to catch it, but he was not successful. But then he met a centaur who told him that he should use the snow. When Hercules walked around the place to try to fashion a trap, he found out that there was indeed a lot of snow, and he was in a mountainous area. So he decided that he would have to trap the boar. He then trapped it by making it run over a shallow layer of snow where it got stuck in the mountains, and then he tied its legs and carried it back to the kingdom, which was easy for him since, as we said many times, he was super strong. Now the fourth task was also to capture or kill another creature from the wild, and it was called the Serenian Hind. Let me give you some backstory about it. When the goddess Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, was first born and she decided that she wanted to hunt in the wild, she decided that she wanted some very fast deer to pull her chariot. Female deer, to be specific. So then she searched in a particular forest and found 12 of the fastest deer ever, whose hooves and antlers were made out of silver. She then took them to pull her chariot, but before she left, she noticed that there was a last one which had golden hooves and antlers. You may be asking, how does a female deer have antlers? I'll tell you that Greek mythology does not make sense in any way. So anyway, Artemis said that she would not catch this 13th one, and that she deserved to live because she was the smartest of all, and that this one was sacred to Artemis. So of course Eurystheus told Hercules that he could bring this hind dead or alive, which was a trick because he knew that if Hercules killed the hind, Artemis would immediately curse him or kill him. But Hercules knew that she was sacred to Artemis, so he knew not to kill her. So as you might see, this one was not the most dangerous, but in fact it was the hardest. Because as we have said, these hinds, especially this one, were very fast and agile. They were in fact faster than an arrow. So Hercules spent one whole year trying to catch this hind, but with no success. But at a time, he decided that he would end this once and for all. He then spent a whole month just making traps, which he set in a particular area and then lured the hind into it. He made about 100 traps or so that any move the hind did, she would get trapped. But the hind was very smart, so she avoided about 99 of the 100 traps he did, but she got caught by the 100th one. Then after Hercules cut the rope, but he tied her to his shoulder, both Artemis and Apollo, the god and the goddess, appeared to him and asked him what he was doing. He then explained to them about his tasks, and that Eurystheus wanted to get him killed by Artemis or Apollo. So then when Artemis realized that she was going to get used if she killed Hercules, she got angry and said that she was not going to get used. She then asked Hercules if he was going to kill her, and he responded by saying no. She told him that as long as he did not kill her and then released her into the wild, that she was okay. He thanked her and went back to King Eurystheus. When he showed King Eurystheus the deer, the king got happy, but then Hercules released her and she immediately began running out of the kingdom and back into the wild. And that is how Hercules completed his fourth and hardest task yet. And now we get to the fifth task that Hercules has to do, which would have been the halfway point if the second task was counted, but it did not count, so anyway, we'll carry on. This task was a bit different because instead of killing one or capturing one creature, Hercules had to go to a town that had no people because it was infested by a flock of birds. This flock of birds were not any normal type of birds. They had razor sharp beaks and feathers, and they could launch out their feathers like an arrow, for example. And there were like millions of them in this village. So when Hercules went, he had a strategy that he would shoot a couple of them, then try to scare them away with fire. This worked temporarily because it scared about maybe 100, but then they came back. So then after spending like a day or two doing this, he got exhausted. Then the goddess Athena, the goddess of wisdom, came and told him that this was not the good way to do it, and that these birds came here because this place was ideal for them to come, because it had food, it was not cold, it was not hot, and it had no disturbances or loud sounds. Of course, Hercules got the hint and decided that he would have to make loud disturbing sounds that would scare away this flock of birds. So then he went around gathering some metals and minerals, and then made one of the worst musical instruments in history. Then he took it, plugged his ears in, and then started going ham on the birds, scaring them away. Of course, they tried to retaliate by throwing feathers at him, but his cloak of Nemean lion fur saved him many times. So then when he went to make the sound near the birds, they would fly away, but then they would come back. So he decided that the best course of action was to go to the center where there would be the most number of birds and scare them away, and then hopefully they would go away and not come back. And this did happen. About millions of them flew away when they heard the horrible noise that came from this musical instrument, which made the others also go because they were scared of Hercules. And that was the fifth task, well done by Hercules. Now the sixth task was very different, but also very disgusting. King Eurystheus told Hercules that his next task was to go to a nearby kingdom that was an ally of Eurystheus, and he would clean the cow pens for them. Of course, Hercules thought that this was strange, but he accepted it because he thought that this was finally an easy task for him. So then he went to that kingdom happily, but when he was about 2 to 3 miles away, he smelt the kingdom before he even saw it. This was because the cow pens have not been cleaned for 15 or more years. And you might be asking, how did these cows survive living in their own poop? Well, I'll tell you, it's because these are the sacred red cows of Apollo. This is because the king of this kingdom is the son of Apollo, so Apollo gave his son these cows as a gift. So since the king did not want to spend any money, he did not hire anyone to clean the cow pens, and the poop kept stacking until this reached today. So when Hercules got there, he decided that he was not going to do this for free, and he decided to go make a deal with the king. Hercules told the king that if he did clean all of the cow pen before sunset, then he would get 100th of the cattle. But if he did not clean it all by sunset, then he would not accept payment, and that the king was the winner because the cow pens would get cleaned a little bit and he would not have to pay anything. So the king, because he was greedy, accepted this. And then he sent the prince with Hercules to act as a witness that Hercules does not do anything wrong. So then Hercules spends most of his time just digging dirt around the cow pens, not inside it, and he did not clean any of the poop yet. So of course this got the prince frustrated because he wanted to gain something from Hercules. Then 5 minutes before the sunset, Hercules called the prince and explained everything to him, and said that if he knocks down this piece of dirt, because there was one piece of dirt left, then the water of a nearby river would come flowing down and clean out the whole cow pen. The prince of course got excited because he wanted the smell to go away because he had gotten used to it growing up. So then Hercules broke the dirt and the cowpen did get clean, but this caused the nearby river to get polluted for hundreds of years to come. Then Hercules went back to the king telling him that he did complete his task with the prince as a witness, but then the king said that he did not promise Hercules anything and that he would not give him 100 of his cattle. Asked him if he would be a just king who would honor all of his promises. The prince told him yes, so then Hercules turned around to the king and proceeded to punch him straight in the face, immediately killing him. Then the prince became the king and did give Hercules 100 of the cattle, which we do not know how many cows that is. So then Hercules took the cows and went back to the kingdom of Mycenae, where Eurystheus is king, sold the cattle, and then told Eurystheus that he had completed his 6th task. But then Eurystheus told him that this task did not count because he had accepted payment for this, and these tasks were supposed to purify his soul, and that the payment made the task not count. If you have been paying attention and counting with me, that means that until now Hercules has done 6 of 12 tasks instead of 10. So we are halfway there through Hercules' story. So we will carry on to the 7th task, which was that Hercules had to go to the kingdom of Crete, where he would have to ask the king Minos for his famous bull. This was by far the easiest because this was all due to timing. Because when Hercules went to ask the king Minos, King Minos immediately told him that he could take him no problem. This was because there had just been a tragedy that happened with the bull and Minos, which you have talked about before. So Hercules was very happy because that was another task that was easy. So he took back the bull to Eurystheus, which made him very mad because he thought that this one would get Hercules killed and would at least take one more year. So then in the 8th task, Hercules had to go to a nearby kingdom called Thrace, which we have talked about many times in the previous videos. But anyway, he had to go there and get some flesh-eating horses from the king. So usually Hercules goes on foot, but this time he decided that he will go sailing with a crew. So he went through some other side adventures before he went back to Thrace to complete his 8th task. So then when he got there, he went to negotiate with the king Diomedes, and the king agreed. So for the 8th task, Hercules had to go to a nearby kingdom of Thrace, which we have talked about many times in our previous videos. But anyways, he had to go to Thrace to get some flesh-eating horses from the king. So this time, instead of going by foot as he usually did, Hercules decided that he will go sailing with a crew. When he went sailing, he decided that he will have some side adventures before he went back to complete his 8th task. When he got back, he went to negotiate with the king to get some of his horses and pay him some money. The king agreed, but then when he went with Hercules and some guards to the pens, he tried to trick Hercules by making the guards push him into the pens where the horses would eat him. But of course Hercules is as strong and sturdy as a rock, so when he was getting pushed by the guards, he stood his place. He then grabbed the nearest one and threw him in one by one. And then he went finally to the king, who was the last one standing other than him, and threw him in also. So then at this point the horses were tame because they were full. So then he grabbed the 4 strongest and best ones, took them and went back to King Eurystheus to complete his 8th task. Then after that, Hercules went back to the kingdom of Mycenae to receive his 9th task from his cousin Eurystheus, who told him that his daughter needed a golden belt and that there was no better golden belt than that of the queen of the Amazons, Hippolyta. When Hercules heard the name Amazons, even he was scared, because back then the name Amazons scared any male hero because it was a tribe of women that were very fierce and strong. We have talked this in previous videos, so that's another reason that you should check them out. So anyway, Hercules went there thinking that this was going to be the hardest task yet, but it was actually fairly easy, because when he went there, he went to their queen Hippolyta and started negotiating, and she actually was going to give him the belt as long as he was going to give it back after a year or 2. But then the goddess Hera could not leave them do it easily, so she decided that she would fly down as another member of the Amazons and whisper to them. She told them that Queen Hippolyta is going to be taken hostage by Hercules. So then, of course, this got all of the Amazons excited, and they attacked Hercules and Hippolyta. Even Hippolyta did not know what was happening. So then when someone drew a bow and shot an arrow at Hercules, she jumped in front of him, which pierced her heart and immediately killed her. Then Hercules had no choice but to take the belt and run. He then jumped into a nearby river and swam away. When he went back to King Eurystheus, he was very angry, like the angriest he has ever been, but he could not do anything because he knew that if he killed Eurystheus, he would immediately get cursed by Hera and maybe even Zeus. So he gave Eurystheus his belt and awaited his 10th task. So then when we get back to the 10th task, we go back to the animal-related ones, because this time Hercules has to get some more red cows, but this time he has to get them for King Eurystheus. But he does not get them back from Thrace. He has to go somewhere new to get them from a ranch which is controlled by a man named Geryon. So when he is on the way there, he passes a place which is ruled by a giant son of Poseidon called Antaeus, who challenges Hercules to a fight. When Hercules is fighting him, he stabs him in the stomach, but the sand heals Antaeus' stomach. He tells him then that as long as he is touching the ground, Antaeus keeps healing. Hercules thanks Antaeus because he told him his weakness, then carries him over the ground and then does pressure on his chest, cracking his ribs, and immediately kills him. Then Hercules carries on and finally reaches the ranch of Geryon and is attacked by his henchman and his dog, but he immediately kills them with his sword. He then sees Geryon, who is a different kind of man. His head is normal, his feet are normal, and his hands are normal. But his midsection is not, because he has 3 separate bodies which make him look very fat. And he has 3 hearts, as he tells Hercules. If Hercules shoots him in the middle one, the right and the left one heal him. So Hercules does a trick. He sidesteps to Geryon's left and then shoots an arrow right here, and it passes through all 3 hearts, immediately killing Geryon. He then takes as many cows as he can, which is a lot because, as we said, he is strong, and then takes them back to King Eurystheus to complete his 10th task and going to his before final task, which is the 11th one. Now the 11th task that Hercules had to do was that he had to get a golden apple from the sacred grove of Hera. Of course, he knew that this was very dangerous because this was the sacred grove of Hera, the goddess who hated him the most. But he knew that Atlas was nearby, was near that grove, so he knew that he had to ask him to get the apples for him. But the problem was he neither knew where the grove was nor where Atlas was. But he knew that he had to ask another titan, so he went to a place where he knew there was a titan who is called Prometheus. This titan was the one that gave humans fire way back when, in the Stone Age. But he did not tell Zeus before he gave them the fire, so Zeus punished him by tying him to a mountain and then making an eagle come every day and eat on his stomach. And then every night the eagle would leave and Prometheus' stomach would heal. And this repeats every day and night. So then Hercules went there. When he saw the eagle eating on Prometheus, he prayed to Zeus and asked him if he could kill the eagle. Zeus allowed him. So then Hercules killed the eagle and immediately Prometheus healed. Then Hercules asked Prometheus where Atlas was, or the sacred grove of Hera, and he told him that it was near the kingdom of Mycenae, but he could only get there near dawn. So Hercules had to wait there until dawn, and when he got there, he went up to Atlas and asked him to get the golden apples for him. But Atlas could not get them at that time because he was carrying the sky. He told Hercules that he had to take the sky from him so that he could get him the golden apples. Hercules thought about it for a while and then accepted. When Hercules carried it, he felt so much pain and he could not move. See how heavy the sky was that even Hercules, the strongest man alive back then, could not carry it. So then Atlas went there, but because he was trapped under the sky for decades, he spent some time chatting with his daughters. He pet his pet dragon, and then he got 2-3 apples from the tree and put them in front of Hercules. But then told Hercules that he would be trapped under there until he died, because Atlas would go and wage war on Zeus and the other gods. But then Hercules asked him for one last favor. He asked him if he could get the Nemean lion cloak, because Hercules' back was killing him. Atlas felt some sympathy towards Hercules because when he was also getting, when Zeus made him carry the sky, Atlas also asked Zeus for a pillow for his back. So then Atlas took the sky from Hercules, while Hercules put the cloak on his back. But then Hercules told Atlas that he is not going to take it back and that he had just tricked him. He then took the golden apples and went back to Eurystheus. Now we go to Hercules' 12th and final task. In it, he had to go down to the underworld and get Cerberus, the giant three-headed dog that Hades owned. This one was actually pretty easy, because when Hercules went down to the underworld, he went to talk with Hades, and he found out that Hades and his wife Persephone were actually great fans of Hercules. But actually Persephone is a daughter of Zeus, so technically she is Hercules' sister. But anyway, Hercules took Cerberus and then told him to act as if Hercules had dragged him from the underworld so that he looks good in front of the other civilians in Mycenae. He then went to King Eurystheus, and when Eurystheus saw the giant Cerberus thrashing around and biting the air, he then jumped into a bronze pot nearby to hide. Of course, Hercules let Cerberus go and told him to go back to the underworld and started laughing at Eurystheus. Then when Eurystheus got out of the bronze pot, he said goodbye to Hercules because he had finished all of his labors, all of his 12 labors. So then Hercules had an auction where a queen called Omphale bought him to become her slave for 2 years, of course, as we already said. So then she made him her enforcer. He made sure that everyone followed the laws, and she sent him to do her dirty work. So after the 2 years ended and Hercules was finally free, he decided that he really wanted to get married. But then luckily for him, one of the kings that was his friend, invited him to a party. When he went there, he met the king's daughter and they decided to get married. But the problem was that she was already supposed to be married to the local river god called Helios, who threatened to destroy the kingdom if she did not marry him. So then Hercules told the king that it was no problem and that he would fight him for his daughter's hand. So then when he went to fight him, Helios was confident in himself and thought that he would not lose, but he did lose. Hercules broke off his horn and then stabbed him. But they had promised that whoever would lose would not take out his anger on the kingdom. So Helios had no other choice but to accept his loss. So after Hercules married the king's daughter, one day they were walking around in the forest when they came across a river that they wanted to cross. But unfortunately it was too deep and there were no bridges around. So while they were thinking of a way to cross it, a centaur came and told them that he could help them cross the river, and that he could accept any payment. So of course Hercules was a bit suspicious, but then he agreed. After he put his wife on top of the centaur, he took off running away to try to kidnap her. But Hercules was able to chase him down and hit him. But then he whispered to Hercules' wife, telling her that his blood was a magical love potion that she could give Hercules and he would love her forever. So, of course, the girl was suspicious, but she decided that it wouldn't hurt to take it. So then she put it in one of her perfume bottles and kept it for later. So then after a year or two, Hercules went to war with a nearby king, and when he came back, he took one of the girls as a slave from there. But his wife did not know this, and she thought that he was going to marry her. So when he had told her to prepare his best suit, she took some of the centaur blood and put it on it, thinking that it would be a love potion and he would love her again. But when Hercules wore it, it actually burned him, because centaur blood is one of the worst poisons in the world. So this is how the greatest and most famous Greek hero of all time died. Our next hero is called Jason, and he is also one of the most famous and best Greek heroes of all time. But we will not start by directly talking about him. We will first go back a few generations to a king called Amatus, who is the ruler of a small part of a large kingdom called Thessaly in Greece. Anyway, we start with him being married to a cloud spirit called Nephel, and they have two children. One a girl called Hela, and the other a boy named Phrixus. Anyway, he and the cloud spirit get divorced, and he marries a new woman called Ino. But anyway, she hates Hela and Phrixus and decides that she wants to get rid of them. So then one year she made the crops bad on purpose so that then she could go to the Oracle of Delphi with some soldiers and ask why the gods are angry. So then she did this, and when the soldiers went, she stayed in the kingdom. Then they asked the Oracle of Delphi why the crops were bad, and the Oracle of Delphi told them that Ino ruined them on purpose. When they were coming back to the kingdom, Queen Ino met them on the way there and bribed them very heavily and told them that they should say that Hela and Phrixus are the reason and that they should be sacrificed to the gods. So of course they accepted the bribe and went back to the king Amatus and told him about this. So then he knew he did not want to get them sacrificed, but he had no choice because he was afraid of the gods. So he let then his wife Ino sacrifice them. But the children's mother, Nephel, the cloud spirit, was watching from above. So then she called one of her friends, which is a golden ram, and she asked him to help her. This golden ram was actually very famous back then in Greece. He was very famous because whenever you saw him, it was like a good omen. And if he stayed in one part for a certain amount of time, it would get blessed, the crops would be better, people would get healthier, etc. etc. So then he decided that he will help her by saving her children. When he went there, he pushed Ino to the ground and then let the kids hop onto his back. He then took them flying away, but when they were flying over the ocean, Hela fell down from his back and fell into the ocean and immediately died. This part was named after her and it was renamed to Hellespont. But Phrixus, her brother, was able to survive. The golden ram took him to a very far away kingdom called Colchis. When they landed there, the golden ram told Phrixus that he had to sacrifice him as a thank you to Lord Zeus. Phrixus was sad because he was grateful to the ram helping him, but he had no other choice, so he sacrificed the ram. Then the king of Colchis, King Aeetes, came and saw the ram, and of course he was very happy. So then he skinned the golden ram and took his fleece and nailed it to a nearby tree where its magic came out and helped the entire kingdom. And then he appointed a dragon, I don't know how he got it, but he made it guard this golden fleece all the time. So now we skip a couple hundred years to another kingdom called Iolcus, which is ruled by a king named Cretheus. He is also married to a woman named Sidro, but at the same time he has been taking care of his orphaned nephew, a girl named Tyro. But his wife, the queen Sidro, was jealous of Tyro because she was youthful and very beautiful. So she of course she hated her, and she decided that she wanted to make her life hell. So then at 17, Tyro got married to Poseidon, the god of the seas, and they had two children together. The older one named Peleus, a boy named Peleus, and his name literally means birthmark because he had a birthmark under his eye, a red spot. But the second kid, who was also a boy, we do not know the name of. Anyway, when Sidro knew that Tyro had two children, she took them for herself and then made Tyro as a worker in the palace and threatened her not to tell anyone about this and found any excuse to hit her and punish her. So anyway, 10-17 years later, Peleus finds out about this, that Sidro is not his real mother and that Tyro is his real mother. So he gets so mad that he pulls out a sword and then chases his stepmother Sidro all across the palace. But then she runs to the temple of Hera and goes to the altar and prays to Hera to save her. But Hera does not save her because she is a terrible woman, and then Peleus kills her with his sword. So of course then Hera got mad at Peleus because he got blood all over her altar, and then she got mad at him. So then after that, the king Cretheus for some reason decided to marry his cousin Tyro again, and they had a bunch of children, the oldest called Aeson. So at this point there was a debate of whoever should become the new king. Should it become Peleus, the oldest and strongest, or Aeson, who was the son of Cretheus? So when Cretheus died, there was a big problem because he did not leave a will to whoever would become the king. So then Peleus took matters into his own hands and killed all of his half-brothers except Aeson, who was able to run away to a very far away kingdom and get married. And Aeson had a son, and his name was Jason, who is the hero of this story. And now we'll start talking about Jason finally. So now we skip until Jason is actually 17 years old, and for some reason King Peleus, who is technically his uncle, decides that he will host a sports competition in one of his allied kingdoms, which so happens to be a kingdom near Jason and Aeson. But of course Peleus did not know this. But before we continue, we have to understand something. After Peleus killed most of his brothers and sisters, he went to the Oracle of Delphi to ask if there was anyone who was going to take his place as king by force. And the Oracle actually told him that he should be aware of the one who wears only one shoe. So from that point onwards, he made sure that whenever somebody visited him or he visited someone, he made sure that they wear two shoes. So we go back to Jason. When he's trying to go participate in the sports competition, his parents warn him that maybe King Peleus will spot him and kill him. But he assures them that he will take care and try not to get spotted. So then when he is going, he is walking across a swamp where he sees an old woman trying to cross it, but she is unable to. So he thinks that this is not the behavior of a normal old woman, so he thinks maybe it's a god in disguise. So he asks her if he can help her, and she tells him yes. So he carries her across the swamp. While he's walking there, his leg gets stuck, but when he pulls it out, he loses his shoe. So then he continues, and then when he puts down the old woman, it turns out that she's actually Hera, the queen goddess, who we talked about earlier. And she tells him that it is his destiny to become the next king after Peleus, and that he should approach the king and make to him an offer that he cannot refuse, and that the king will know him because of his missing shoe. Jason got excited because he loves to adventure, so then he went and beat everyone in the sports competition, and everyone was rooting for him by calling him One Shoe. So then when the king noticed that he had one shoe, and when he heard everyone calling him that, he got worried. So then Jason approached the king and told him that he is actually his cousin Jason, that his father was Aeson, and that he should become the next king. Of course, the king tells him that he has no proof of this, and how should he make him king? Jason tells him that he will go on a challenge, that if he solves it, then there's no reason that he should not be king. And Peleus accepts and asks him what the challenge will be. Then Jason thinks for a moment and tells him that he will retrieve the golden fleece. When everyone hears this, they start to cheer because everyone loves the golden fleece. So then after that, the king agreed and told him that he will help him even get a crew and a ship to go there. And the crew consists of many famous heroes, but I will just name a couple of them. Orpheus, who we talked about 2 turns ago, who was the famous singer. Hercules, who we just finished talking about and is probably the most important hero of them. Atalanta, who we talked about in the previous video. And finally, two people called the Boreads, who were brothers, and they were the sons of the king Boread, who is a wind spirit. So of course they were like normal human beings, but they had purple wings on their backs, so they were very useful for helping the people move. One more person was Argus, and he was actually the one who designed the ship that they were sailing with. It was called the Argo, and it was the biggest, fastest ship back then. It had 50 oars, which was the biggest number back then, and it was very large, and it could hold up to 1,000 soldiers. So of course he had to come along with them. So then they had to go through many adventures to get to the Golden Fleece, which we will talk about right now. So now we skip a couple hundred years to another kingdom called Iolcus, which is ruled by a king named Theseus. He is also married to a woman named Cedro, but at the same time he has been taking care of his orphaned nephew, a girl named Tyro. But his wife, the queen Cedro, was jealous of Tyro because she was youthful and very beautiful. So she of course she hated her, and she decided that she wanted to make her life hell. So then at 17, Tyro got married to Poseidon, the god of the seas, and they had 2 children together. The older one named Peleus, a boy named Peleus, and his name literally means birthmark because he had a birthmark under his eye, a red spot. But the second kid, who was also a boy, we do not know the name of. Anyway, when Cedro knew that Tyro had 2 children, she took them for herself and then made Tyro as a worker in the palace, and threatened her not to tell anyone about this, and found any excuse to hit her and punish her. So anyway, 17 years later, Peleus finds out about this, that Sidro is not his real mother and that Tyro is his real mother. So he gets so mad that he pulls out a sword and then chases his stepmother Sidro all across the palace. But then she runs to the temple of Hera and goes to the altar and prays to Hera to save her. But Hera does not save her because she is a terrible woman, and then Peleus kills her with his sword. So of course then Hera got mad at Peleus because he got blood all over her altar, and then she got mad at him. So then after that, the king Cretheus for some reason decided to marry his cousin Tyro again, and they had a bunch of children, the oldest called Aeson. So at this point there was a debate of whoever should become the new king. Should it become Peleus, the oldest and strongest, or Aeson, who was the son of Cretheus? So when Cretheus died, there was a big problem, because he did not leave a will to whoever will become the king. So then Peleus took matters into his own hands and killed all of his half-brothers except Aeson, who was able to run away to a very far away kingdom and get married. And Aeson had a son, and his name was Jason, who is the hero of this story. And now we'll start talking about Jason finally. So now we skip until Jason is actually 17 years old, and for some reason King Peleus, who is technically his uncle, decides that he will host a sports competition in one of his allied kingdoms, which so happens to be a kingdom near Jason and Aeson. But of course Peleus did not know this. But before we continue, we have to understand something. After Peleus killed most of his brothers and sisters, he went to the Oracle of Delphi to ask if there was anyone who was going to take his place as king by force. And the oracle actually told him that he should beware of the one who wears only one shoe. So from that point onwards, he made sure that whenever somebody visited him or he visited someone, he made sure that they wear two shoes. So we go back to Jason. When he's trying to go participate in the sports competition, his parents warn him that maybe King Peleus will spot him and kill him. But he assures them that he will take care and try not to get spotted. So then when he is going, he is walking across a swamp where he sees an old woman trying to cross it, but she is unable to. So he thinks that this is not the behavior of a normal old woman, so he thinks maybe it's a god in disguise. So he asks her if he can help her, and she tells him yes. So he carries her across the swamp. While he's walking there, his leg gets stuck, but when he pulls it out, he loses his shoe. So then he continues, and then when he puts down the old woman, it turns out that she is actually Hera, the queen goddess, who we talked about earlier. And she tells him that it is his destiny to become the next king after Peleus, and that he should approach the king and make to him an offer that he cannot refuse, and that the king will know him because of his missing shoe. Jason got excited because he loves to adventure, so then he went and beat everyone in the sports competition, and everyone was rooting for him by calling him One Shoe. So then when the king noticed that he had one shoe, and when he heard everyone calling him that, he got worried. So then Jason approached the king and told him that he is actually his cousin Jason, that his father was Aeson, and that he should become the next king. Of course, the king tells him that he has no proof of this, and how should he make him king. Jason tells him that he will go on a challenge, that if he solves it, then there's no reason that he should not be king. And Peleus accepts and asks him what the challenge will be. Then Jason thinks for a moment and tells him that he will retrieve the golden fleece. When everyone hears this, they start to cheer because everyone loves the golden fleece. So then after that, the king agreed and told him that he will help him even get a crew and a ship to go there. The crew consists of many famous heroes, but I will just name a couple of them. Orpheus, who we talked about 2 turns ago, who was the famous singer. Hercules, who we just finished talking about and is probably the most important hero of them. Atalanta, who we talked about in the previous video. And finally, two people called the Boreads, who were brothers, and they were the sons of the king Boread, who is a wind spirit. So of course they were like normal human beings, but they had purple wings on their backs, so they were very useful for helping the people move. One more person was Argus, and he was actually the one who designed the ship that they were sailing with. It was called the Argo, and it was the biggest, fastest ship back then. It had 50 oars, which was the biggest number back then, and it was very large, and it could hold up to 1,000 soldiers. So of course he had to come along with them. So then they had to go through many adventures to get to the Golden Fleece, which we will talk about right now. One last thing that you should know about the Argos crew before we head off to their adventures is that the ship's head was actually made from some magical wood taken from the sacred grove of Dodona. This magical wood became sentient and could actually help the crew or give prophecies also to help them. So this actually came in pretty useful for a couple of times, but we'll get into that later. First we'll start with their adventures. After they headed off, their first adventure was when they landed at an island called Lemnos. This was actually the place where the blacksmith god Hephaestus landed after he got thrown off by Zeus. But you'll remember that if you have watched my Greek gods video. Anyways, at the time that they arrived, before that by a couple of years, the women were cursed so that they smelled very bad and were very disgusting. So of course their husbands kept away from them, which made the wives angry. The husbands kept spending time at pubs and kept staying away from the women, and they got so mad that in fact they killed all of the men except a couple few that were able to escape and go warn other kingdoms not to go to the island of Lemnos, or they will get killed too. And the problem was that none of the women knew how to sail, so basically they were stuck on this island, and that in a couple of years the island would be empty and there would be no humans on it. But luckily for these women, the Argo reached them. But funnily enough, after they killed the men who were their husbands first, the smell immediately went away as a punishment. So when Hercules and the rest of the crew of the Argo landed there, the woman immediately asked them to marry them and told them that they would treat them like kings if they stayed with them. Of course, this was very tempting for all of the men except for two people. One of them was the female hero Atalanta, and this makes sense that she did not get influenced by this offer because she was a woman, and she also liked living in the wilderness and did not like to live like a king, being all lazy. And the second person was Hercules, because he was already treated like a superstar with all of his adventures that we just listed 10 minutes ago. So anyway, when the Argonauts, including Jason, Orpheus and the others, were just about to get married to this woman, Hercules and Atalanta scolded them and told them that they had a better plan to get to the Golden Fleece. This made Jason wake up and realize that he did a mistake trying to marry this woman, and that he lost track of his real goal, getting the Golden Fleece, so that he becomes the king. So then he apologizes to everyone and says that they have to leave. But some of the Argonauts actually decided to stay and get married. So they were left behind. So after that, the crew of the Argo were left low on food and supplies and stuff like that. So they had to go to a nearby island or kingdom to restock. So while they were sailing around the place called Hellespont, where, if you remember, this was the place that Hela died, who we mentioned in the beginning of Jason's story, they found an island where there was a mountain called Mountain Bear, and it was named so because there was a hole in it in the shape of a bear. So when they arrived there, they found a large kingdom ruled by a king called Cyzicus, and he was very friendly to them, because at first he thought that they were pirates, because they got attacked a lot by pirates. But when he found out that they were the Argonauts, he was delighted and invited them to a party, because he had heard about them somehow, and that they were planning to get the Golden Fleece. He told them that after they partied, he could give them the supplies they needed, and then they could go on their way. So after they party, during the party, the king told Jason that they better not go to the other side of the island, because things were not fun there. Jason did not understand this, but he agreed to that. So then, after they finished partying, they were all drunk, and they managed to get back to their ship and sail away. But the next morning, when some of them woke up, they remembered that they did not take any of the supplies that they needed, so they had to turn around. But if they wanted to turn around back to the kingdom of the king Cyzicus, they had to sail for more than 5 hours, and they were not about to do that. So they decided that they will just go to the other side of the island and just walk it there, which would be easier instead of turning the whole ship around. So when they went there, they all went to the kingdom to take stuff, but they kept Hercules and his cousin Hela, who was also his apprentice, to guard the ship. While Hercules was guarding the ship, there were some monsters called the Earthborn. They were basically like humans, but they are giant and they have 6 arms and they are actually very buff. But Hercules was stronger and killed all of them, and there were about 20 of them. But some of them were able to escape and go back to warn the other Earthborn. So then when when the other Argonauts got back to Hercules, they said that they could not find a way back to the kingdom and that they had to turn the ship around. Hercules told them that they better hurry before the other Earthborn came back and attacked them again, because they would attack in much bigger numbers, in the hundreds. So then they turned around, but by the time they got back to the kingdom, it was night time and it was pitch black. Okay, so they could not see anything at all. So then Hercules told them that they better move quickly before the other Earthborn attack, and in larger numbers, probably in the hundreds. So then they decided that they have no other choice but to turn the ship around. But when they got around to the kingdom, it had gotten night time and there was fog, so it became pitch black and they could not see anything at all. No one could see even his hand. So when they managed to get down after a long struggle, they heard some people that were not them, and they saw some lights. So they thought that it was the Earthborn again, so then they attacked. They kept fighting until daybreak, and when they saw what happened, they were horrified. Because what happened was that the Argonauts had successfully gone back to the other side of the island, but the king Cyzicus and his followers actually thought that these were pirates, as we have said that they got attacked by pirates a lot. So they attacked them, and the Argonauts thought that these were the Earthborn. So they kept fighting, and actually King Cyzicus was killed along with many other people and some of the Argonauts as well. So of course both sides were grieving. So the Argonauts spent some days burying the dead and paying their respects to the dead. So then they took their supplies and headed off. Of course, at this point they were not feeling very good because they had wasted their time at Lemnos, and they had also killed their friends at Hellespont. So they wanted to do something heroic for their third adventure. But this was not the case. When they got to another island to restock on water, because they had finished it fairly quickly, they sent Hercules, his sidekick Hela, who we mentioned, and another man called Polyphemus. They sent them to get some water for them, as we said. So when they went there, Hela was standing in the middle of the island for some reason, and there was a pond behind him. In this pond were some naiads, river spirits or water spirits, and they thought that Hela was actually pretty good looking, and they all wanted to marry him. So they got giggly and happy, so they pulled him underwater, forgetting that he needed oxygen to live. So it was a matter of a couple of minutes, and he was actually dead, because there were 3 naiads and he could not fight them all at once. When Polyphemus was walking around, he heard Hela screaming when the naiads were pulling him underwater. So he went to investigate and saw a broken pot that Hela was actually holding. So then he went to call Hercules to investigate, and they both kept looking for him all around the island for a couple of days. Of course, the Argonauts got worried and they decided to search for them too. But after a couple of days, Jason, who was the leader of the Argonauts, as we said, decided that they could not waste any more time searching for Hercules and the rest, and that they needed to carry on. Of course, the rest of the Argos crew was not happy about this, because there was no doubt that Hercules was the most important and that he was going to be very useful, but they had no other choice. They got so angry at Jason that, in fact, that they accused him that he got rid of Hercules on purpose, so that he did not share the fame with him. But then a water god named Glaucus came out and told them that he was another seer who could see the future and give prophecies. He told them that it was the gods' will that Hercules and the others got lost on that island. When they asked him what happened to them, he said that Hela was dead, and that Hercules was actually supposed not to be on this journey, because at this time he still had not finished his 12 tasks, and that since his sidekick got killed, he was going to go continue his tasks. And finally, that it was Polyphemus's fate that he would make a kingdom in that island called Chios. So then the crew got delighted because they felt that Hercules was dead and that Jason got rid of him. So then when they heard this, they did not accuse him anymore and trusted his leadership, and then they continued their journey. So then after they finished that adventure, they realized that they were lost and they had to go to the Black Sea, but they did not know how to go there. So they decided that they will stop at the nearest kingdom to ask for directions. But unluckily for them, the next kingdom was not exactly friendly, because when they stopped there, they were greeted by King Amycus, who was the king of that kingdom, obviously. But he was very large, tall, and fat. But he was very strong and could box. He challenged one of them to box and promised that he would kill him in the match. And then when Jason asked him what he would do if they declined, he told him that he will gather his army and kill them all. So Jason was about to start boxing him, but then one of his crewmates, a son of Zeus, called Polydeuces, said that he will fight him instead. Polydeuces was actually very light, he was featherweight, and he was much faster than King Amycus, but that was what made him win, because King Amycus was strong but very slow. Whenever he came to punch, he did too much and almost fell and he stumbled. So Polydeuces anticipated this, and he waited for the next time that King Amycus did a right hook. When he did that, Polydeuces turned to the right and then brought his elbow on King Amycus' neck, killing him immediately. So then, immediately after that, the king's people attacked Jason and his crew, but they were ready with their swords and weapons and killed them. But after they finished killing them, they remembered that they did not get what they came for, and that was directions for the Black Sea. So then Jason went to the shiphead, which was from the magical wood that we talked about, and asked it if it knew how to get to the Black Sea. And it told him no, that it does not know, but it knows someone who can. It told him that he has to sail for a couple more days and stop at the nearest kingdom. There he will find an old man named Phineas, and that he will tell him how to get to the Black Sea. The ship's head also told him that he should bring the two Boreads with him. When Jason asks why, the ship head tells him that he'll see. So then when they arrive there, Jason takes the two Boreads and goes searching in this kingdom. The Boreads go by flying and looking for an old man named Phineas, and Jason goes by foot. Somehow they find him and they regroup, and then they talk to Phineas. He tells them that they should go away because he does not want anything to do with them. But then Jason tells him that he has the Boreads with him, and Phineas gets interested and asks him that he's ready to make a deal. Jason asks him what he wants with the Boreads, and Phineas explains that he is a seer, and before he became old, he used to tell everyone their entire fate without any riddles or hiding anything. And this made Zeus angry because he was afraid that if all mortals knew their exact future, they would not need the gods anymore. So he cursed Phineas, made him old, made him blind. He made him eternally old, so he did not grow up or get younger. And finally, he cursed him by making two harpies. A harpy is a mix between a large eagle and a woman. He made these two harpies follow him around. Whenever Phineas was about to eat, these harpies would attack him and steal his food. But if they finished the food and there was some food left, it would turn bad. So Phineas had just enough to survive, but he was always hungry and nauseous. So then he told them that his curse could be lifted if the two Boreads killed the harpies. But the Boreads were afraid that Zeus would curse them, but he told them that it would be okay. This is what Zeus said. So then the Boreads brought some food for Phineas, waiting to trap the harpies. The harpies did come and they were about to swoop in and take the food, but then the Boreads were there waiting for them. But unfortunately the harpies were faster, so they tried to run away. But after a few hours of chasing them, the Boreads were able to catch them. Then they took them to the ground near Jason and were about to kill them, but then something happened. A goddess appeared, and she was Iris, the goddess of prophecy and also of communication. She told them that Zeus said that Phineas' curse had been lifted, but they did not need to kill the harpies, and then that they should let the harpies go. So the Boreads listened and let them go. One reason also that the Boreads were so wanted to kill the Harpies so much is that Boreads and Harpies are natural enemies and they both hate each other. So anyway, after the Harpies ran away, Phineas told them that his curse had been lifted and then told them the way to get to the Black Sea. He told them that the first challenge that they will have to go through is the clashing rocks. There are two large cliffs that clash at each other every once in a while. He told them how to get through them. And the way is that they should gather some pigeons and let them free when they see the clashing rocks. If the pigeons go through them, then it's a good day and they might have a small chance to pass through them. But if the pigeons do not make it and die, then there is no chance that they will be able to make it. So then after that he told them some more things that would happen if they got through the clashing rocks. He told them that first they will see a group of sheep farmers, but that they should not talk to them or go near them because they are evil. He then told them that there will be cow traders and that they should trade with them because it will be useful later. He said that afterward they would go to the land of the Amazons, but that they should not stop there and they should pass it immediately because it's a bad idea to stop there. And then finally he told them if they sail for 30 more days after that, they will finally reach Colchis, which is ruled by King Aeetes, and that is their destination where the Golden Fleece is. Jason then asks Phineas if he can tell him his future and if they will succeed in this mission, but Phineas tells him no, because it's better if he does not know what the good, the bad and the very bad is, because he now, after he got cursed by Zeus, realized that he was mistaken to tell everyone their entire future. So when they did get to the clashing rocks, they thought about a mile away. So they listened to what Phineas told them and they captured a few pigeons. Then they let them go and counted how many seconds it took them, the pigeons, to get across. It was about 37 seconds, and then they sent the Boreads to see if the birds made it across. When the Boreads went to see and came back, they told them that there was blood and feathers all on the clashing rocks, so they would not make it. So Jason told them that they would have to wait till tomorrow to retry. They did the same thing the next day, and this time the pigeons passed at exactly 60 seconds. So then immediately after, Jason and his crew started drawing their oars and let the wind help their ship and got across barely. They were almost killed by the clashing rocks. Then after they made it, they had a few adventures that Percy didn't mention in the book, but then he immediately goes to when they arrive at Colchis. Jason says that he will go negotiate with the king to get the golden fleece because that's their only hope. But then we go to the goddesses Hera and Athena talking in Olympus, saying that there is only one way to help Jason get the golden fleece, and that is to make King Aeetes' daughter Medea fall in love with Jason and marry him. They knew that this was risky, but they decided that this is the only way. So they went to talk to Aphrodite, the goddess of love, to make Medea fall in love with Jason. So when Jason went to talk to King Aeetes, he told him about his journey to get the golden fleece and said that he can give him a challenge. If he does it, then he could take the golden fleece and leave in peace. The king had no other choice but to accept, and then gave him a super hard challenge. He told him that he has some bronze bulls, bronze giant bulls in fact, that were given to him as a gift from the god of blacksmiths, Hephaestus. And he was also given some armor from the god of war, Ares. What Jason had to do was, he had to go to the sacred grove of Ares that the golden fleece was in. There he would go to the dragon that was guarding it, take some teeth from the bucket that was next to it, and then plant them in the dirt. Then he would, but before he planted them, he had to get the bronze bulls to dig some holes so that he could put the seeds, the dragon teeth, because they were used as seeds. Then he would get some blood from anywhere. Then he would use the blood as to water the teeth. Then some skeleton warriors would come out. But the trick was that these skeleton warriors only obeyed King Aeetes and would probably try to kill Jason. So anyway, Jason had no plan, but he went back to the ship to try to get a plan with his crewmates. When he was there, we go back to Medea, who was the daughter of King Aeetes, and she decided that she will go to talk to Jason because Aphrodite made her fall in love with Jason. But of course nobody knows that except Aphrodite and the goddesses. So then Medea makes a special potion and goes to talk to Jason. She tells him if he promises to marry her and then take her away from Greece and never leave her, that she will help him get the golden fleece. He accepts and asks her what's the plan. She gives him the potion and says that if he doesn't, that this potion will protect him from any fire. Otherwise, he would get burned into a torch from the dragon. She then told him that this potion will also give him super strength to help him pull the bronze bulls to make holes in the ground. She then told him that he could get the blood from some of the cows nearby, but she told him that the real trick was the skeletons. When they would come out, they would try to kill Jason, but the trick was that he had to get a nearby pebble or rock and then throw it in the middle, that they would get distracted. Jason asked her how, but she told him that he will see. Anyway, she told him that even if he was able to succeed in this, her father would not just give him the fleece, he would get him killed. So the plan was that Jason, after he finishes the challenge, he would go to King Aeetes and tells him that the next day he would get the golden fleece, because King Aeetes cannot get him killed in front of the public because that would make him look very bad. So anyways, after he tells that to the king, he will go back to his ship and tell his crewmates to get ready to sail, because then after that he will get some people with him to the sacred grove, steal the fleece, and then try to run away as fast as possible and try not to get spotted by King Aeetes and his army. So the next day, Jason went to the sacred grove of Ares to receive his challenge and finish it immediately. When he went there, he saw that there was a large audience. Almost all of the people of the kingdom were there, and they were chanting for Jason to cheer him up, to try to get him to win the task. There was also the Argonauts, the crew of the Argo, also encouraging Jason to complete the task. When he went there, the king gave him the bucket full of dragon teeth so that he can plant them, and then showed him the two giant bronze bulls that will have to make the holes for the teeth. So then Jason took the first bull, the two bulls attacked Jason at once, but Jason was able to push one off to buy himself some time, and then got the other one and held him from the neck, and then punched him in the face so that he was dizzy. So then he took his horns and made a big line, big enough for him to empty the whole bucket full of teeth. So then he took the other one and also punched it in the face, and then chopped off its head, killing it. This made King Aeetes mad, but he could not do anything about it. Then Jason took the bucket full of teeth and put them in both of the rows. And then he asked the king for the blood, because the king told him that he will not need to kill any cows. He gave him a bucket full of blood that he just sprayed on top of the teeth. When, just as the bucket got empty of blood, the ground rumbled and hundreds of skeleton warriors came out. They were just about to attack Jason when he remembered Medea's advice. He found a nearby rock that was the size of a baseball and then threw it at one of them, and it hit him in the face. His skeleton head fell off and hit another one, and he fell on top of another one, etc., etc. So in a few minutes they were all fighting each other and forgot about Jason. So then Jason went to the king and kneeled before him and told him that he had finished his task and that he will party now, and tomorrow he will come to get the fleece. So then he went, and of course everyone in the kingdom was partying for him, including the Argonauts. So then the king whispered to himself, saying that he will have to kill him the next day. So then when Jason went back to the Argo with his crew, they kept some fires near it so that the people thought that they were still partying. But then most of them were ready on the Argo itself to be ready to sail immediately. So then when dawn came, Medea and Jason both went to the sacred grove again and went to get the fleece from above the dragon. So when they saw the dragon, Jason was so scared, in fact, that he froze. Percy described the dragon as large as a building, and one of its eyes was as big as a car. So then the dragon opens its eyes and was going to attack Jason, but then Medea told him not to sleep and started singing. When she was singing, Jason heard that she said a word, hypnos, which is the name of the god of sleep, which made sense since after that the dragon closed its eyes for a second, then 2 seconds, then fell asleep. Jason also was standing in his place and almost fell asleep, but then Medea slapped him and he woke up. Then he climbed on top of the dragon and realized that it had large scales, each one as large as a shield, and they were all pointy and almost stabbed him a couple of times. Then he climbed on top of it and got the fleece, but the second he got it off the tree, he heard some drums coming from the kingdom, and Media told him that the guards knew about this. So then they both ran to the Argo and they sailed away. So then after that they sailed away, and after a few minutes they realized that they were being chased by one of the army ships. So then Media told them to sail faster, because if they were lucky it would be her brother leading the ship, and he would be merciful to them and kill them quickly. But if they were unlucky it would be her father, and she said that if it is her father, then they would have been better off getting killed by the dragon. So then that motivated the Argonauts to sail faster. So then after a few days they realized that the army split into two, and that the one closest to them was actually her brother's ship, and the other one, which was half a day away, was being captained by her father. So then they had an idea. She raised a white flag, which meant that she surrendered and was willing to negotiate. So then her brother came and told her that she made a mistake by betraying their family and running away with Jason. So then she told him that she is sorry, and he told her that apologies would not help her. But then she told him that she was sorry for killing him. And then she threw a dagger straight at his throat, immediately killing him. Of course he had guards with him, but the Argonauts quickly disposed of them and threw them off the ship into the water. So then, of course, Orpheus and the rest were disgusted at Media because she killed the general under a flag of truce, which meant that the gods would curse them, and moreover that he was her brother, which would bring a much stronger curse on them. And they also felt bad for her brother. But then she told them that they have no time to worry about the gods' curse and that they have to escape from her father. So then she called Jason to come and help her cut up her brother. Of course, Jason was shocked, but he listened to her. They cut up all of her brother's limbs into separate pieces and then threw them over the water and continued sailing. When Media's father, King Aeetes, came and saw his son's hand, he stopped the ship, and they started gathering the parts of the body parts of his son. This wasted valuable time. In fact, it wasted a day or two. So that meant that they had no chance of catching up to Media and Jason. So then they gave up and decided that they have to go back and bury their dead and give up. So then the Argo continued sailing for a few days, but then they got stranded and lost all of their food and water, and decided that they have to dock and get some supplies and continue going. But unluckily they docked at a very bad place, the island of Crete. We talked about this in one of our Greek heroes videos. This was the place that Theseus had to go to defeat the labyrinth and kill the Minotaur. But this was not what happened in here. When they docked on Crete, they found a giant man as big as 3 or 4 buildings waiting for them, and he was made out of metal, and he was going to destroy their ship. But luckily they found a way to defeat him. Media told Jason that this was made by the god of blacksmiths, Hephaestus, and that he was the one who gifted this to Minos because he was a good person. So then she knew that Hephaestus charged his automatons, which are like robots, and this one was an automaton, by putting molten lava in their body as blood. So she said that there was a safety valve somewhere in his body that they had to open, and the lava would go out and Talos would die. Surely enough, they found it at the back of his leg, at his heel. So then Jason went there with Media, and they both had to work together to open it, and then molten lava came out, and luckily no one of the Argonauts or the Argo was killed. So then they continued sailing. And after they defeated Talos, they were able to go to Crete and get the rest of their supplies and food and water and head sail again. After a few years, surprisingly, they were able to finally get back to the kingdom of Iolcus. And then when Jason walked into to the castle with the golden fleece on his shoulder, he showed it to King Peleus, and he told Jason that fine, after he died, Jason could become the king. Jason thought that when he brought the golden fleece, he would be immediately crowned king, but apparently that was not the case. So then he was angry about it, but decided that in a few years Peleus will die because he is already old. So then when he told these news to Media, she said that he would probably die soon. But what Jason did not know was that she was planning to kill him. When they brought the golden fleece back, Jason and media and all of the Argonauts became important people in the castle. Jason became a general, and media became very important in the castle also. So one day she was doing some sorcery in the castle when Peleus' daughters came and saw her make an old goat young again. They answered that they wanted to do the same thing to their old father Peleus, because he had gotten old and was very weak. So then she told them that they could do this, but it's a very disgusting way and it's very hard. It needed a strong stomach and needs someone to be courageous. They all looked to each other and then said that they're courageous and they could do it. She warned them one more time, but they said they can do it. She showed them how to do it. First, she cut up the sheep into different pieces. Then she took a pot of boiling water, put some special herbs and ingredients in it, and then threw the sheep in it. After a few seconds, the sheep popped back out, young and intact. She told the girls that they could do this to their father Peleus, and he would become young. Of course, media did not want him to become young at all. She was planning to get him killed, and that's what happened. There were 3 daughters. 2 of them were making the potion ready, and the 3rd one went to bring their father Peleus. She was covering his eyes and took him to the kitchen where they were making the potion, and then showed him everything. He asked him what the surprise was, and then they all approached him holding knives in their hands. And then they cut him up and threw him into the water. Of course, he did not come out young, and he did not come out in fact. He died immediately. When the daughters realized what they had done, they were horrified and then told everyone in the palace about this. So then all of the people were horrified and said that Jason could not become king at all because of what he had and his wife had done. Of course, Jason did not know what his wife had done and was not in on it, but he had no choice but to run because the people of the kingdom were chasing him. He then went to another kingdom where he became a general because of his great combat experience. He became one of the greatest generals, in fact. One night when he was having dinner with the king, the king told him that he could not, of course, love his current wife Medea, and that he had to marry his daughter, who is very beautiful and young. Jason agreed, and then later went to tell his wife Medea. He told her that he asked her if she had any problem with him leaving her and then marrying another woman who was the king's daughter. Of course, Medea was angry on the inside, but she told him that it's okay and that it's no problem. After that, she killed both of her sons and went on a rampage, killing other people of the kingdom, and then killed the king. So then when Jason went back home and he found his sons dead, of course he got angry at Medea, but then she took her magical chariot and ran away. So then the other people of the kingdom ran after Jason and forced him to run away once again. He then spent a few years traveling around Greece depressed, and then one night he found where the Argo was, and it was abandoned, and there was a lot of graffiti on it, and it was ruined. So he decided that he would sleep under the ship's head where the arrow of Dodona was, and he slept under it. But then when he was sleeping, the arrow had been rotting for a long time, so finally it rot so much that it fell on top of Jason's head, immediately killing him. And that is the end of Jason's story. Okay guys, this has been it for Percy Jackson's Greek Heroes series. This is part 3 and the final part, as we have finished it right now. I hope that you enjoyed this series very much. If you did enjoy it, please put a like and tell me who your favorite hero is and what you liked about the series. And also, if you have any suggestions or if you want to tell me anything, also leave it down in the comments. I'll try to reply to you. And don't forget to subscribe and put on the ring so that you do not miss any videos at all. Share with your friends if you liked it, and bye.